Hello, everybody. My name is Bull. Today I'll be talking about Cowboys versus Aliens and how it fits into the Western genre. I mean, the title alone gives off Western vibes. I mean, Cowboys. It was a title used in the early West. I think the film takes place in 1837, which was a prominent time to use that term, calling somebody a cowboy. Aside from that, one of the major things that stood out to me was the visuals for the film. One of the main things is like the main road that cuts through the town that you see in most Western films and Western genres. It's always like that giant road that usually leads in and out of town, and usually where all the big shops will be at, or the saloons, the shops, the sheriff's office, prisons. It all be on that main road that cuts straight through the town. Another thing is the landscape. It was always like a desert, barren terrain with like very little to no green foliage. It's just desert and plains, and like you get a few trees here and there, open fields, nothing thick, no thick foliage, mountainside. Gives off very Grand Canyon looks and aesthetics, and I think the film captured that perfectly for a Western genre. Aside from that, the characters themselves, the way they dressed, their clothing matching historical cowboy attire, from their button-down leathered vests, women wearing nice dresses with nice tops, the cowboy hat, the typical cowboy hat, holsters around their waist to hold their guns and their bullets and other assortments. The little satchel things, little pant satchels that they wear. All of that very much lines up with the Western genre and what cowboys of that time period and characters of that time period would look like. Even Doc, the saloon owner, the way he's dressed in that image, very much fits what someone from that time period would be wearing. Aside from that, one of the major things was the characters and how they evolved into the sort of the Western type or Western character, or how they strived away from it. Jake Lonergan, one of the main character in the film, gives off this sort of outlaw coming in to a city. You know, nobody knows him, nobody knows his story, and he stands up to Dollarhide's son, who's basically a tyrant to the townspeople, which gives him this sort of heroic aesthetic for a western, as you can see in this part of the film. Just get to it.
Now who's got money?
You want to watch where you point that thing before you get hurt.
Listen, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt because maybe you don't know who I am. Oh.
As you can clearly see how he stands up to Dollarhide's son, it gives him this sort of unsung hero play for like old Western movies where like someone would come in and, you know, be the voice of the town. But I love how they play with that character, because when you later find out that more about Jake, you find out that Jake was actually like someone just like Dollarhide's son. He was an outlaw who would run around stealing and pillaging and just taking gold, and that's all he cared about. He ran with his old crew, which they later run into in the film, and I think it's a fun way to play with the character, giving him this sort of this one way of seeing him, but then later finding out that it's completely different. I think he really relates to Nat Love's character in The Harder They Fall, where he's not necessarily a good guy by any means, but for the sake of the specific situation that he's in, he's portrayed as this folklore hero and doing the right thing, but only for like his own gain. Another character that stood out to me was Dollarhide himself, who was portrayed as the antagonist, this antagonist cowboy, like the scary tyrant who everybody should fear, even allowing his son to go into the town and do whatever he wants because people are so afraid of his dad that he's free to just do as he pleases. But as the story progressed, you learn more about Dollarhide and find out that he was just a man who had a hard life, and even adopts what is it? I think kid's character's name's Emmett. He adopts Emmett and gives him a little knife and shows that he's not this tyrant that we know. Even though the opening scene he's about to like tear a person in half with like horses, but he sort of like grow with the character, which I think is it's prominent. It's not too prominent in westerns, which I think that's where it strives from your typical western, where you meet somebody like this and you think, oh, they're high and mighty, and they're most likely going to be high and mighty all the way through. But Dollarhide really grows as the story progresses. He works together with some of the Native Americans in the film, and he shows that he has another side to him, and he's not this tyrant that everybody knows him to be, that typical westerns would portray. Another character is Doc. Doc was the saloon owner who evolves into this gunslinging westerner that you see in most films. After his wife gets taken by the aliens, he has to shed his old self of being a saloon owner and turn into this gunslinging cowboy who has to like put aside the fact that all he knows is how to run a business and own a saloon. Even from like the early scenes where he's being patronized by Dollarhide's son, you see that he grows into like this westerner cowboy aesthetic that you see in most western films. And I think it's a great way to show how this movie pertains to a western and how the film portrays its characters and how they develop into that typical western aesthetic. In conclusion, the film itself, aside from the aliens, everything about the film, from the visuals to the key scenes, to the characters, to even the opening and the ending, all portray like western genre and what we look for in a western film. Cowboys running around, gunslinging, shooting things, dressed as cowboys from that time period. It's just everything about it screams western, and that's why I chose this film. And I think it's a great film, and everybody should watch it. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed.